Good morning and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus, to another analysis and breakdown of the Quran of the Muslims. Yes, we're back once again to break this thing down verse by verse into factual, logical statements in English so that you and I can understand who or what is Allah, what does he mean by the contents of his book here, and more importantly for us as non-believers, how does this affect us in our lives today? So, before I start, as I always do, I'm going to ask you now, if you have any doubts or questions over my factual accuracy, please, before you ask them, buy and read one of these, an Arabic-only Quran, not the English one. Don't use Quran.com or the Google Translation novelization, because they are not accurate, incorrect, romanticized, with bits added, removed, or changed. Only use an Arabic-only Quran, which is the only confirmed divinely inspired word of Allah Akbar. And once you've done so, which I hope you do, you'll recognise every single word I'm about to say to you now from my notes here is 100% true and accurate of the words of Allah and what Muslims believe today. So, with that in mind, let's carry on. We have been going through the book AL-NISA, which is the book of women and children, in which the Muslim man instructs his wives how to brainwash the children in the jihad, how to hate the Jews and the Christians, how to be terrified of Allah and the punishment's going to be lathered upon him if he doesn't obey and surrender. And now we're going to go through some more stuff about obedience and punishment, the ways of justice, severity and mercy, in the words of Allah, of course. So with that in mind, let's carry on where we left off last time, which is verse 150 of Al-NISA. 150. Surely those who do not or cannot fully accept the truth in Allah, Muhammad and his words of promise are infidels. And they say, "We are infidels because we do not fully surrender to all things revealed in Allah by Muhammad, and we wish to live outside of what Allah doth command." End of verse. So it's a bit weird, that one. It's mostly a quotation from an infidel admitting that he's an infidel, which is kind of weird. So let's break it down. Why is Allah speaking in this way in his Holy Quran? So he starts off by saying surely. So this means when he says indeed or surely, he's usually putting doubt in the sentence and then saying that because he wants to cure you of your doubt. But I feel like that's not what he's doing here. He's actually being very certain here. Instead of saying surely as a question, he's saying no, this is absolutely certain. Surely those who do not or cannot fully accept the truth in Allah, Muhammad and his words of promise, i.e. don't believe that the final day of judgment is in no doubt, because it is in huge doubt, and don't believe that the jihad, killing all the infidels and then getting the end times genocidal prophecy completed, is never in doubt, because it is. Those who don't believe the genocidal end times prophecy and the final day, Allah and Muhammad and his messenger, and his words of promise, because he basically lies all the time, those people are infidels. And the way you know, O Muslim child, says the mother, that they are infidels, i.e. we're going to have to kill them later, the way you know that is because, and I quote, this is in quote, speech bubble time, this is what they say. They say, "We are infidels because we do not fully surrender to all things revealed in Allah by Muhammad, and we wish to live outside of what Allah does command." End quote. So, we know this, although it's been repeated many times in the past, is Allah propping up a previous thing that he's said, and the previous thing is this. Everything inside this book is what you need to know, O Muslim, says the mother to the child. Every single word of it needs to be obeyed. It's a command. It's not an option. It's not a preference. It is not a give or take. You do this. You do it fully. You believe it fully. You blindly obey. You don't question or have any doubts. Otherwise, you are wishing to live outside of Allah's commands. It's not like you've even done anything yet. You just have the desire not to do this. You are wishing to live outside of Allah's commands. You know, you're going, I wish I didn't have to do the jihad. No, you don't say that. You don't wish to not do the jihad. You do it. That is what Allah is saying here. And if you don't blindly obey and surrender 100% at all times, O Muslim child, says the mother to the child, surely you are an infidel, and what we do with infidels is off with their head, you are dead, burning forever with no virgins. That's the punishment. That's what this means. So, a blazing start, if you'll excuse the pun, to our reading. And we move on. 152. These are the worst types of all the world's infidels, and shall see in their end a most fearful and shameful torment from Allah. End of verse. Oh, he's having a bad day. Maybe he fell out of bed on the wrong side. Who knows? Anyway, so if we break this down, what he's saying here, those guys we just described who are admitting that they're infidels because they had a wrong think, effectively. They didn't want to go on the jihad, they thought. Or, they didn't want to pray 5 times a day. Like it was 5:59 and they got to pray at 6 and they were like, oh, I just want to go back to bed. No. You do not even think about seditionary thoughts. You do it. You blindly obey. You don't think, you just do. That's what Allah's saying here. And if you don't, then you are the worst of all the world's infidels. And in your end, you shall see a most fearful and shameful torment from Allah himself. So Allah personally, if you don't do these things, is going to damn you to hell, grave torture you, and then kill you in the most fearful and shameful way in front of everybody, and then you'll be destroyed. That's what he's saying here. This is one of the most angry and hurtful and hateful things he will say in the whole book. In the Book of Women, mother to child. So it's indoctrination. That's what we know. Then in 152 he goes on. And those who did show obedience to it and accept all of Allah's promises, commands and verses without hesitation did see a great reward in this, because Allah was merciful and oft forgiving. End of verse. So we know if we break this one down, in consideration of the sheer rage and hate and the sharp edges of the previous 2 verses of how you're an infidel, you're admitting it, you're having a wrong think, and that means you're going to not only die, but you're going to die forever in pain, torment and suffering in the most shameful and fearful way, with Allah personally torturing you and killing you. The other side of the coin is if you are worshipping enough and following the Quran of the Muslims 100% in all times, in all words, and not even thinking about anything else, then you show obedience to and accept his promises, commands and verses without hesitation. That's the important bit. You're not allowed to think. You're not allowed to hesitate. You blindly run towards Allah's commands and you do not stop for breath. You sprint. That is Allah's command. But if you do it, guess what you're going to get? A great reward in the hereafter, which means not burning forever in horrible torment, pain and shame, dying as a martyr in the jihad like a good, faithful, courageous Muslim, not one of these weakling arsehole infidels. And you are going to get 72 virgins in the hereafter, and Allah will love you. Those are the rewards offered if you die in a jihad. Obviously, you have to die in a jihad to get them. And then before you get them, all the infidels have to die. Otherwise, paradise cannot be created. So even though he's not saying here, we know because he's previously said it, the fearful and shameful torment won't happen straight away because all the Muslims have to die for that to happen. But conversely, the paradise and the 72 virgins won't happen straight away after you die because all the infidels have to die for that to happen. So now we know we're up to the stage in the book where we can confidently and accurately say Allah's punishments and his rewards in the hereafter are of no consequence. He has no teeth whatsoever. He cannot interact with the world. He cannot personally do anything to you in life or death. He requires all of us to be dead for paradise, or all of them to be dead for hell to be created. In other words, unless the entire world is dead, neither one of those things can ever happen. But anyway, sticking to the verses, you will see a great reward if you obey his nonsense book, the Quran of the Muslims, blindly. You go to the jihad and martyr yourself, and then you can expect at some stage in the future 72 virgins, and that's your great reward. Because Allah is merciful and oft forgiving. So he's merciful in not tormenting you. That's the thanks you get. He's not going to torment you forever. And he's oft forgiving, because despite the fact that you are fornicating virtually every single day and you're committing tons of sins, because you died in the holy war for him killing the infidels, when the rest of the jihad is complete, you will get 72 buxom virgins, and they'll be the top rank virgins, top shelf virgins, none of this lower crap. They'll be nice, Western pretty ones with white faces like he described, because he's extremely racist and actually doesn't seem to like Muslims or Arabs all that much. So the virgins are all Western white ladies. They're all in chains, of course. They're robotic brainwashed slaves in the paradise. They stand around the edge of a circular tent waiting for a man to approach them, and then they just dive bomb you and have sex with you. That is paradise, in the words of Allah. But anyway, you're not going to have it straight away. I'm sure you'll have plenty of centuries or thousands of years, or perhaps forever, in the space in the middle. I call it the elevator to paradise. You know, it's like Catholics have purgatory. Muslims also have purgatory, but it's not called purgatory. It can't be the same thing. No, the Pope doesn't say it's the same thing, and neither did Mohammed, even though it's exactly the same in description. It cannot be the same thing unless the Pope says so, and he hasn't. So we know the elevator to paradise is the very crowded elevator purgatory to paradise, which is still going down, and when it finally reaches the floor where there is paradise after everyone on earth is dead, then you will get your virgins. If you're obedient, but if you're not, off with the head, you're dead, burning forever in fire, torment, pain, shame, and everything else. That's what this means. Now, we get to the important bit. This is what I was getting towards. You'll like this. This is retreading previous verses right at the beginning of the book, which he probably thinks we've forgotten by now or just didn't bother to read. But he has underestimated me. I have read every single word, accurately in Arabic and English. I've read 6 different versions of this thing. And I can remember every single word. So, Allah, let's go. I know and see all things now, Allah. Let's see what he has to say for himself. 153. The Israelites asked for a proof of wisdom from heaven, and they did not accept Allah. They asked even after that from Moses, and they said, "We won't accept until God shows himself openly." End quote. And then Allah struck them dead with thunderbolts and revived them in his mercy. Even then they took a sinful calf and escaped like cowards, but all of this Allah did forgive. End of verse. So, let's break it down. He thinks he's speaking to a Muslim child who's never read the beginning of the book, through a mother who's never read the book at all, on the commands of the father who's probably had it preached to him in the mosque by the imams, who are the only people who might have possibly read the beginning of this book and actually cared to remember it. But I've been watching and hearing all. Allah, I am on you like a ton of bricks. So let's go. This is full of mistakes. Let me tell you why. He starts off by saying the Israelites asked for a proof of wisdom from heaven and didn't accept Allah. What they actually did while they were slaves, captives in Egypt of Allah, while he was mind controlling the Egyptians under the Pharaoh, even though he denies this, we know from factual sources and this, that that's exactly what happened. The Israelites were passing through, and it was Allah's command on the Pharaoh that they enslaved the Israelites, because before that they just didn't care. Egyptians, Israelites, whatever, they didn't care. They didn't hate each other. They had no reason to be at war or have any feelings towards each other. In fact, they were both Semitic people at that point, so they probably could have been brothers. But Allah didn't want them to be brothers because he hates the Israelites, because Israelites are connected with Yahweh and he doesn't want Yahweh to have any worship. So he has to kill the Israelites, and that is why he had tricked the Pharaoh and the Egyptians into firstly worshipping him, the false one, and then enslaving the Israelites with a view to try and kill them or make them bow to Allah so that his arrogance could be saked and they could worship him. But they wouldn't do it. They would not do it even under the threat of death, even when they were getting their wives and daughters raped and killed and their sons beheaded, and they were slaves having all their wealth stolen from them and being told they were going to die in captivity. They kept saying, no, we're not going to worship Allah, he's a false god, we're not going to do what you say, we'll be good slaves, we won't try and kill you because we understand how slavery works, but all the same, we understand how free will works and we want to get to heaven, so no. We're going to continue worshipping Yahweh, who is the God of our fathers, who we have a covenant with already. He goes on to say, after that, they didn't accept Allah. They even after that, even after not accepting Allah, they even asked that from Moses, he showed them another sign, and then they didn't accept the second sign, and they said to Moses, we don't accept this God whatsoever until he shows himself openly to us. Now, in Allah's version of the story, The Israelites are all saying, we don't believe in you, Moses. We don't believe in God. We don't believe in Allah. We don't believe in anything. We're just non-believers of everything, which is an absolute load of rubbish, because we know the Israelites are called the Israelites because they are following the God of Israel, Yahweh, whom Abraham met in the desert and made his covenant with, who wasn't Allah. But Allah wants to write this guy out the story and usurp his place as God, even though he's not. So he makes something up, and the bit he makes up is Allah shows himself in the clouds and goes, Israelites, I will kill you all for your insubordination. Lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt. And he kills them all dead, including Moses, and they're dead in the ground. And then he goes, and he raises them all up from the dead again, and then he goes, see, now your covenant with God is now over. Even if he was real, he didn't save you. I just killed you all with lightning bolts. So your covenant's done. Now I've risen you from the dead. You're having a new covenant with me, okay? And just as a little sweetener, because I did kill you and then resurrect you, and you're probably wondering how the hell you're alive, here's some quails and wine. Let's get you drunk and let's get you happy on food. And then at the end of the great feast, we're going to go, you sure you don't want to worship Allah? To try and trick you into it. But still you won't do it. Moses and the Israelites are not having any of it. They ate the quails, they took the wine according to Allah. But at the end of it, they said, nah, we'll be on our way if it's all the same to you. We don't want to worship Allah. We're still going to worship Yahweh. We're still going to do our Judaism cult of nomadic, because they're not officially Judaism yet. We're still going to do our desert worship thing of Yahweh, and we're still going to have our rituals. We're still going to hide the Ark of the Covenant from you, and we're still going to bugger off and build Israel. So, thanks for the quails and wine, guys. We're getting gone. And they leave. Then, after that, even then, they took a sinful calf in the desert. Now, interestingly enough, the sinful calf in the desert is also described in here, the Quran of the Muslims. But it's very odd that they call it a sinful calf, because if we remember, and we do remember because I made several videos about it, episode 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11, please go back and watch them if you are interested. And this is how the sinful calf story goes in the words of Allah himself. This is not the one the Torah says, this is the made up Allah version, right? So we're sticking to that as fact for the sake of this. Moses escapes with the Israelites into the desert, across the sea. He is chased down by a bunch of heavily armoured Egyptian soldiers who want to kill them because they've escaped, and he didn't want them to escape. He wanted them to bow to Allah, and they would not. He wanted them in captivity, but they escaped with Moses because of God's miracles through Moses, and they are now escaping across the sea somehow. The sea has parted for them to allow them to escape. So the Pharaoh's thinking, I don't understand this. This doesn't make any sense. But Allah's there, and Allah's going, get your soldiers out there now! And so the Pharaoh sends his heavily armoured soldiers into the sea to kill the Israelites. Even though it's the sea and they're covered in metal armour carrying big axes and swords made of metal. So clearly there is a large percentage of a threat that if the sea comes in, all those soldiers are dead. And the Israelites have no armour, not carrying any weapons. Even if the sea comes in, they can just swim. So Allah directly endangers the lives of the Egyptian soldiers. He throws them away like they just don't matter, so that he can chase the Israelites into the sea. But the Israelites make it to the other side. Moses turns around, and as he spots the Egyptians closing, he goes, I command the Dead Sea to shut in the name of Yahweh. And guess what happens? The sea closes in on the Egyptian soldiers, drowning them all. And then they reach the other side. But that's not all. When they reach the other side, Allah and his angels, and this is the bit you need to keep in mind for the rest of this story. While they're escaping, they're on the other side. The sea's come in, killed all the soldiers. Egypt is now poor because their entire money was in their slaves and in their soldiers. And in one foul swoop, Allah has just been defeated by Moses, an old man of 99. He's like really old at this point. Moses has led all the slaves out. They haven't got a single slave left to pick their food, prepare their food, do all their chores. None, not one, because it was the Israelites. Not only that, their entire military is now destroyed. So they are defenseless, without slaves, and they are facing economic ruin now because of the words of Allah not being true. And everyone witnessed this, Israelites and Egyptians alike. Everyone saw Allah's defeat, Allah's incorrect prophecy, Allah's rage and spite, getting the Egyptian soldiers killed via his guidance being terribly poor, not good as he promised. And the last thing that happens is he stands on the seashore with his angels. He turns towards the escaping Israelites and Moses. He says in a loud, angry voice, and I quote, this is in quotes, "We hate you all, you evil Jew apes. We hate you all. We're going to kill you all. We're going to kill you all, and we're going to destroy Israel. This is my prophecy." Thus, we have the first mention of the end times genocidal prophecy of Allah and the root of anti-Semitic racism from the Arab Muslims against the Israelites. That's where it started and why we have a war in Israel today. So keep that in mind as we continue with verse 153 of AL-NISA. "Even after they took a sinful calf. But all of this did Allah forgive? No, he didn't." What actually happened, he didn't want them to escape. He said they wouldn't. He said, anyone who defies me and doesn't bow to me will be killed. They weren't killed and they did defy him. Then he said, none will ever escape my wrath. He was wrong again. They did escape with Moses across the sea and the Egyptians ended up dying for him trying to chase them down. He didn't send his angels then, did he? No, he always says he's going to send angels to help his soldiers in battle. Why didn't he send his angels then? Because it was against God and he knew they would have been wiped out. The angels were not willing to go. So they get to the other side. He says, we're going to kill you all, you filthy Jew apes. We're going to kill you all. We're going to destroy Israel. That's my prophecy. And then on the other side, Moses is so edified and just glad and grateful to God for allowing him to do these miracles and save the Israelites. He gathers all the Israelites together and says, right, we are going to sacrifice the best food we have. Even though we're in the middle of the desert, we've barely got any food left. We're going to sacrifice the best bit of our food to Yahweh for saving us. And everyone agreed this was a great idea, so that's what they did. But in addition to that, in the book of Allah, this is Allah's word once again, so this deviates from what the Torah and the rest of factual history records. Allah then claims Moses was scratching his head going, but I can't remember how to do a sinful calf sacrifice. Israelites, how do we do a sinful calf sacrifice? And they're all scratching their head going, don't know, mate. We don't know. No one knows. So they don't know how to do a calf sacrifice. So Allah goes, Yahweh, we want to do a sacrifice to you. Just wait right there. Allah, mate, how do we do a sinful calf sacrifice? Can you help me, please? These ignorant Jews don't bloody well know. Literally what happens in the book of Moses in the Quran. Not only that, Allah, despite being stood on the shore shouting that he's going to kill these guys and destroy their town later because he's now a racist and he hates all of them and they're filthy Jew apes that I hate, quote from Allah. Moses says, how do we do the sinful... no, he doesn't actually call it sinful. Moses says, how do we do a sacrifice? And Allah expressly describes how to do a calf sacrifice. And not only did he describe in detail how it's done, it needs to be a pretty cow, not too old, not too young, not one that's seen the plough, the field or a drought, not one that's had a full life or ever been worked, not with any blemishes, one that is admired and attractive and loved by its master. Quote, that's what Allah says to Moses. He says, get one of those, sacrifice it in the way I have told you, and then, this is the important bit, Allah says, go and do as I have commanded. So Allah commands him to do the sinful calf sacrifice himself. And if he says no, Allah will punish him. So he doesn't say no in the book of the Quran, this is. He goes and does the sinful sacrifice of the calf to Allah's instructions. And he does it the same way he's told. He does it well. What does Allah do? Allah turns around to the rest of his remaining Egyptians who are fairly pissed off because they've had their whole kingdom now destroyed. And from this point in history, Egypt way declined. They're no longer the most powerful kingdom on earth. In fact, they're one of the weaker kingdoms now because they've got no military, no slaves, no wealth. And they're embarrassed and demoralized by this huge defeat despite having their God there on the ground with them and his angels. They can't even defeat a bunch of short Jews who are slaves, who don't have any weapons. These guys whipped the hell out of Egypt and Allah and his angels and escaped over there. and then demonstrated that they actually don't know an awful lot because they had to ask Allah, who was trying to kill them, how to do a sinful calf sacrifice. And Allah, in his grace and mercy, helps them do it. But then later claims, it's secret agent Allah, I'm only helping them because it's my little plan for them to build up Israel and build up a load of money so we can go and kill them later. That's what happens in the Moses story in here, in Allah's own words. So, with that in mind, we go to 154. Then Allah raised above their Mount Sinai for a new covenant, and he said, enter the door worshipping and prostrating. Now, this bit doesn't actually happen. This is not in the Torah, the Gospels, or the Quran. This is completely novel, new made up stuff from Allah. But remember, he knows he's going to get away with it because he's telling the child via the mum, neither of which have read this. And the dad's out of the room, so he's not even going to notice if he has read it. And the only people who definitely have read it, probably, are the imams who are not present. So Allah is lying here to his mums and his children and his families by saying, enter the door worshipping and prostrating. And the Israelites said, we do not want to. Oh no, enter the door worshipping and do not ever transgress upon the Sabbath, and we will enter into a covenant with you. So apparently, even though in the last verse they're talking about the covenant that they already had being broken when the Israelites left, now Allah is claiming after they left was when the covenant was made and ratified. So I ask you, if this guy, as he says in Al-Fatcher, never makes a mistake, only ever gives true and good guidance, and if you follow all his guidance you will never be in sin and always prosper, how can he claim those three things in the first 7 lines of his book when he has just totally screwed himself over by misrepresenting the Israelites here compared to his own previous account of the Moses book, and then in 154 said, enter the door worshipping, do not transgress on the Sabbath, and confirmed them a new covenant after they've already left and they're doing a sinful calf? Well, obviously he can't. So we know Allah is not all-seeing, Allah is not all-knowing, Allah is not truthful, Allah's guidance is not good, Allah is a liar who hates Muslims and Jews and wants them all dead. And the proof of that is he's confirming a new covenant which is apparently already in existence. He just said a minute ago they have a covenant. The whole reason he hated them and they ran away is because they broke the covenant. But no, now they're over there doing a sinful calf to his exact specifications that he ordered them to do. He wants another covenant. So he himself forgot that he lied about the covenant before. He's told so many goddamn lies he can't even remember his own bullshits. And that is Allah, ladies, gents and Pikachu. So we move to the final line of the reading, 155. But they constantly broke it. They always sin against Allah, the Israelites. Also, they did repeatedly unjustly kill our prophets and refuse his commanded verses. 156. And they refused to accept Jesus, son of Allah, and Mary, daughter of Aaron, as the Virgin Mother. End of verse, end of reading. So, we get to the good bit. Bearing in mind he's just gone through the Moses, the Israelites escaping, the sinful calf, the re-ratification of the covenant twice in 2 verses, and he couldn't remember when it was made. And he actually doesn't say the reason they didn't want to be slaves, and the reason they were enslaved to begin with, and the reason they kept saying no and managed to escape him when he clearly wanted to kill them all, and the reason he was enraged when they did escape and promised in his genocidal prophecy to kill them later and destroy Israel, is because they have a covenant with Yahweh, and Yahweh's prophecy was, if you keep my commandments, I will lead you out of Egypt to freedom, and I will help you defeat Allah. Now, that covenant is still alive today with the Jews and also us Christians through Jesus and the Gospels. And every single prophecy out of the Old Testament and the Gospels has either come true already, is coming true right now in the current age, or looks like it's going to be true in future. So we know that God and Jesus are the truth, and every prophecy they make is accurate factually. You can check this in history yourself. And now from this page, verse 150 to 155 of AL-NIISA, we know Allah is a big fat liar, makes totally daft prophecies that don't just not come out, but the opposite thing happens. And when this happens in the eyes of God and his followers, i.e. Yahweh and the Jews and Christians, all Allah knows how to do is stand on the side and go, I'm going to kill you later, like a toddler. So that brings us up to the last verse, so let's break it down. This is the bit I really wanted to get to. But they broke it constantly. They always sin against Allah. So he is still whinging about how the Israelites, even though we're talking to you now in the current day, he's still complaining about how the Israelites thousands of years ago didn't die, managed to escape, defeat his entire Egyptian army and his angels, who he was too scared to send. Either that or they just refused to go because they knew it was going to be certain death. Israel was created by Moses and the escaped Israelites who should have been slaves but weren't. And not only that, they constantly say, go away, Allah, we're not following your nonsense book and we don't believe you're God. We actually think you are Satan and your book is an evil book of lies. That's when the racism thing entered in and the whole we hate you filthy ape Jews, we're going to kill you bit. But the last bit, 156, this is, I love this. Chef's kiss to you, Allah, for this bit. And they refused to accept Jesus, son of Allah, and Mary, daughter of Aaron, as the Virgin Mother. Now, everyone thinks in the Arab countries, Jews and Christians are friends, but they shouldn't be, because the Jews don't accept Jesus or the Virgin Mary. And this may well be true. We don't know. We'd have to ask each individual to know. But what we definitely know is true, because it's also true of Christians, none of us accept Jesus, son of Allah, as being true, and none of us accept that Mary, daughter of Aaron, is the Virgin Mary. That's a completely different Mary. So, the reason why Jesus, son of Allah, is in here now, along with Mary, daughter of Aaron, as the Virgin, is to cause a future schism between Christians and Muslims. Because the Muslims now have their own version of Virgin Mary and Jesus, son of Allah. And when people are generically saying Jesus and Mary in Muslim countries, they're going to be talking about these ones. But in Christian countries, when we say Jesus and Mary, we're talking about Jesus, the Christ of Nazareth, you know, the real one, and the Virgin Mary, also the real one. So now there are two. A false Mary, a real Mary, a false Christ, and a real Christ. And those poor old Muslims think Jesus and Mary are false, so that must mean Allah's real. So he's using the entire thing to trick his Muslims back towards him. Because think about it. If you're an Arab Muslim and you do all the bookwork and you actually have read the Quran, you've read all the hadiths, you've visited all the holy sites, you've seen all the relics, you've read all the books, you've looked online, you have every right to think that Jesus isn't real and Mary's not really a virgin. Because they're not, if you're an Arab Muslim. They're these guys, the fake ones. And so you think, cool, Christianity is also false. So Allah's the truth. And you go back to slavery. That's why he's done this. Not only that, you now think Christians follow the fake guy and his fake virgin mum. So you think they're a fake religion. When what you should really think is Allah is Satan, the Quran is a false doctrine, Islam is a false religion, and Christianity is true, Christ is the truth, and the Virgin Mary was actually virginal, and did have Jesus as a virgin birth, as is described in the Gospels. But you're never going to know that now, thanks to Allah, his lies, and his Quran of the Muslims, where, if you remember at the beginning of the page, he said, don't ask any questions, don't have any doubts, blindly obey without hesitation, otherwise I will give you the worst, most shameful torment and pain, and I will personally torture you in the grave, and then you will die. Says the mother to the Muslim child. Remember, this is child development in AL-NIISA, the Book of Women and Children. So he is brainwashing his children very early on to believe in Allah, despite that he's clearly a liar and a fake, false, not even a god, he's just a demon. and also to hate Christians and think they're false when they actually have the truth. And we know that. He knows that. Otherwise, why would you make a false guy called Jesus Christ, Son of Allah, and have a woman called False Virgin Mary? Unless you knew the other ones were real and you were trying to not have them visible and have these ones playing the role. Hegelian dialectic, that's what that's called. And Allah was using it 1,000 years ago in order to trick his Muslims into blind surrender, so that he could later on command them into a jihad to finish the job he started in Egypt, which Moses and Yahweh prevented him from doing. The end times genocidal prophecy, the death of all the infidels, Jew, Christian, atheist, apostate, pagan, Buddhist, Hindu, agnostic, everyone else. Because we all witnessed him being false. And that's the end of this video. So I hope you really enjoyed this. It was a bit of a long one. I absolutely loved it. This is one of the best episodes. Go back and see episodes 7 through 13 if you want the original videos with the details of the Moses story in the Quran. You will love those too. But in the meantime, I've spoken enough. That's the end of this video. I hope you really enjoyed this and you learned something. God bless you all. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. So now you know. Muslims aren't evil. They're not born like that. These poor guys are brainwashed from a young age using violence and deceit from Allah, who is Satan.